So the Wildstalker hero tree preview is out. I'm going to discuss it and give my opinions on it from a feral perspective, of course. So Bloodseeker vines, the tree kind of revolves around these. They proc from Rip and Rake. The vines deal bleed damage over time. They also cause your target to take increased damage while they have a vine on them. So thematically, I think it's quite cool. It's very druidy, plays into the hybrid aspect. It's got the bleed aspect. Bloodseeker vines in itself sounds cool, gives me Bloodseeker Dota vibes. So there's a lot of potential, I think. Obviously, we don't know what the visual effect looks like, but I think I'm happy with the kind of theme. Not that this is a review, but I'm just going to make notes. So theme 4 out of 5, visual effects we don't know. So the biggest issue for me is how they proc. So it's an RNG proc off Rip and Rake damage. Even if they use like an RPPM proc system, it's still going to be bullshit. We've seen it with Primordial Stones, with the current Helm enchant, with so many trinkets. It's never going to feel good. You're going to be wondering, like, why am I doing less damage this pool? You're going to look at details, you're going to look at logs and being like, oh fuck, I got bad hero tree RNG. It never feels good. And the thing is, like, at least with trinkets, you might be able to opt out of them for another trinket. With this, it's one of our 2 hero trees. So for it to be based around RNG like this, I'm really not a fan. It's just not fun. Hopefully they change it. I think, if they can find a better way to more reliably proc the vines, because otherwise it's just going to feel bad. And it's just not really interesting. Kind of goes against the sort of consistency of a dot spec. So RNG, it's a 0, I guess. So another issue with this tree is the fact that gameplay seems a lot more suited to Resto than it is Feral. So you have these dots and you have these hots that you can spread to multiple targets to try proc more vines, proc more blooms. But the issue is, as DPS in PvE, a lot of the time there's only one target. But as a healer, you always have at least 5 targets to heal. And especially with these extra nodes, like they can duplicate onto a nearby target, or they do AoE damage or AoE healing when they expire. They're not really useful for DPS when it's just a single target boss or whatever, but pretty much always useful as a healer. Even this, more damage and healing based on the amount of vines or blooms you have. But again, you have more opportunity to proc more with multiple targets as a healer. Obviously, certain pools, there'll be big pools or whatever in Mythic Plus, but in terms of like consistency, it favors Resto a lot more. Also, with this capstone, even if there's gameplay in switching targets to targets with vines on them because they take more damage, again, that's completely lost in a single target. But as a healer, you can still target people with blooms. You might even be able to swift mend blooms, I'm not sure. It just feels like there's a lot more interaction as a healer than DPS. So going through the tree, this talent, it's whatever. It doesn't really do much for us. I'm glad there's a Moonfire talent because there probably won't be one in Druid of the Claw just because bears have another tree for arcane stuff. So it's fine. Catform stuff, we're always informed, but at least it has some gameplay implications for Resto. This one I really don't like. We play a dot spec to cast and manage dots. Longer Rake just doesn't feel good. Negatively impacts gameplay. It's not going to feel good with Blood Talons. It's also going to effectively more or less cancel out the Rake portion of Circle, so it's diminishing talents here, which isn't good. And for me, Circle is the best talent in the tree for gameplay, even above like the actives or the procs. So Blizzard should really be going more in Circle's direction rather than the opposite, but maybe it's a Resto decision. I can kind of see what they're going for. Longer Rake means more uptime, more Vine procs, but it really doesn't feel good for gameplay. Strategic Confusion, I'm going to give this a 5 straight away. Really well thought out. You get a crit buff to your Shred, Rake, and Brutal Slash for 6 seconds after opening from Stealth or using Tiger's Fury. So what this means is you might not want to Tiger's Fury in Stealth. You might want to do your opener, benefit from the buff, and then pop Tiger's Fury, benefit from it again. Especially popping Tiger's Fury with your CDs like Berserk, which is going to benefit from these. Also Convoke, which is the Shred especially, is going to benefit, especially in that 6-second window. And it's not even going to be dominant for Convoke because with Incarn you get free Prowl reset, so you'll be able to proc it again. So it seems quite neutral between Incarn and Convoke, which is really good. There's also gameplay with like Predator. you could potentially space out your resets if you don't have infinite, and if you don't need energy, just for high uptime on this buff. So, really cool. I think I wish this number was a bit higher, but I'm not too worried about tuning right now. So this utility node, both are good options. This is going to be quite niche though, so how much choice is there really? But there will be times this is useful. The 6 seconds seems a bit short, but maybe that'll change. This node, it's whatever, it's boring. Not much to say about it, but I guess there's going to be some boring nodes. This node is also good. I want to say this seems a lot better. I mean, this can be useful, but I think this is just consistently going to be better because you're going to benefit from your healers healing, frenzied regen and things like that, and you still get a regrowth benefit. But I like both options. So we get to the vines section, and there are some cool talents here. I like this choice node, 2 second longer vines, which has a lot of synergy with the capstone for longer damage amp. Also with the feral frenzy node, which puts a vine on the target, making it 8 seconds sort of guarantees it covers your entire feral frenzy window, and probably like a convoke as well if you convoke straight after. So that has really nice synergy. Also, when the target dies, your vine jumps to another nearby target. This works really well with the longer duration, because if your vine procs and like right before the target dies and you just lose a 7 second vine, that'd be really wasteful. So this adds a lot of protection. So yeah, that really works really well. So root network, extra damage for every vine you have out, pretty cool. Has cool synergy with twin sprouts, which gives you a 10% chance to proc an extra vine when you proc a vine. And I assume that can proc off itself, so 10% chance to proc a vine, which also has a 10% chance, and so on. So it'd be pretty cool seeing multiple vines come out at the same time. And twin sprouts has synergy with pretty much everything, right? So bursting growth, proc more vines, proc more bursts, more vines, more uptime of this on more targets, and even the added duration here is going to synergize with this, because you have more vines and they're longer. So yeah, really cool, the kind of synergy between all these nodes. Also implant, really good. It means you're not relying on RNG to get a vine up while you feral frenzy and also convoke. Like I said earlier, with this added duration, you can kind of fit a convoke into your vine window from your FF. So that's really cool. It even adds a bit of AOE value to feral frenzy through bursting growth. So really happy with that. So something I alluded to earlier, even though I like these nodes, they are a lot less interesting in single target. For example, bursting growth, twin sprouts. What happens if it procs and there's only one target? Does it duplicate on the same target? With the capstone, it can be kind of interesting, potentially targeting vine targets, but again, in single target, it's just not a thing. Also, there's other questions like with bursting growth, if the target dies with a vine on them, does it still go off? I assume expire also means death, but we'll see. But yeah, root network, if this isn't duplicating and if you're proccing less because you can't spread rip and rake on single target, this just becomes super easy choice. Maybe it ends up super cookie cutter, like this is single target, this is AOE. I think this one is pretty obvious, it's probably single target, this is AOE. So, a little bit lacking there, but it's not too bad. So one positive thing about this tree is it seems kind of talent neutral. I think they've done a good job designing it that way. Obviously there's some exceptions, like circle is going to be really, really good with this tree, but it's a dot focus tree. It'd be weird without circle. TFB should probably work with vines, but I don't think that's enough to make TFB sort of mandatory or anything. Swarm and Tiger's Fury might work with vines, but I don't think it would make them mandatory. Double Claw Rake's another one in AoE. It's probably really, really good with this tree, obviously. But again, it'd be weird not taking Double Claw Rake with this sort of dot and rake focused tree. So I think it's really good in that sense. One of my biggest concerns with hero talents was, is it going to make our regular talent tree super cookie cutter, because Feral's had some of the best choice of any spec the last 2 seasons, and don't want that ruined. And I don't think this tree does that. I think it's pretty neutral, so that's definitely a positive. The other thing I wanted to say about this tree is it might mix up stats quite a bit. It seems like it'll favor haste quite a lot because haste, faster dot ticks, more vine procs, more uptime on this. And I think that's good. I think it's cool to have different stats favored based on sort of talents, hero talents, and so on. So that's just one thing to note. So what needs to change about this tree? Well, the vine stuff is cool, but the RNG isn't. So it needs a more reliable way to proc vines. I think it's fine to have RNG through like twin sprouts and stuff in more minor forms, but not as the main way to proc it. Also, it needs more interaction with the kit. It doesn't really change gameplay at all. It doesn't really interact enough with Feral's kit. I know they don't want to add complexity, probably don't want to add keybinds, but it has to do a little bit more at least than what it's currently doing. Also, when I first read this, I thought it said rip and rake, put a vine on your target, like guaranteed when you cast it on them. And I thought that was really cool. They're adding like this 6-second sort of front-loaded bursty kind of damage to our dots, which would be really useful, both in Raid and Mythic Plus. But then I realized after it's just a chance to proc off damage. But I feel like that's kind of the direction they should have gone. Guaranteed way to proc vine, like through rip. And then you can interact with your vine somehow. Like if you rake your vine target, then that can spread vine onto other targets, or like you shred your vine and it extends it, or moonfire and it spreads moonfire to another target with vine, or even like if you shred target with a vine, it puts dire fixation on your entire vine network. I know I'm getting a bit hypothetical, but sort of little interactions like that would have been cool. Even like maybe replacing Thrash or Brutal Slash with Vine, like as a new builder. Especially Brutal Slash with the charge system, you could have had like charges of vines. Maybe even like making Maim a way to proc vines, because it's like a 20-second cooldown or whatever. Seems pretty suitable. But you know, even like interaction with the Resto kit, like Swift Mending or Rejuving or something, somehow like empowers your next rip to cast a vine. You know, little things like that would have been cool, especially because you know it's kind of a hybrid tree, and in Classic right now, like power shifting and stuff feels really good. I feel like there's a way to make that feel good on live. But anyway, there's always another tree to look forward to, and also this is the first iteration. I'm sure they'll expand on it, so not too much to complain about. Like, it's not insulting or anything, but it is a bit dull. But yeah, that's the video. Thanks for watching.